Everything is fine here on Detention Block AA23, a Star Wars podcast. I'm Michael Mudge, joined by Zach Alt and Dustin DeFranco, here to talk primarily about Mandalorian today, representing my Mandalorian experience shirt from Celebration this past year in honor of the next episode of The Mandalorian. How are you guys doing today?
Fuck it, we're doing it live.
Doing good.
Every time.
I know. I was going to say, I feel like that's a common first line for you, Dustin, these days.
That Bill O'Reilly blow up is just so good. It's just comedy gold. It's gold, Jerry. It's gold.
Gold, Jerry. And to that point, as a reminder, we are live. So come bring us your opinions, your thoughts, questions that you want answered by us to our live chat on our channel right now. So happy to bring you guys in as part of the show just as much as we are. So, and how about yourself, Zach? How are you doing? We haven't seen you in a while.
Good. Yeah. Apologies for being absent for a while. Been a lot of toddler struggles the last couple of weeks, and then mixed with sicknesses, sick child, all sorts of fun. A nice fall on the ice, if you can kind of see.
That's right. How has that been going? Didn't you get a concussion or something?
Yeah, I slipped on the ice because we live in the amazing state of Minnesota. And had, that nice situation where it was like 40 degrees the day before, froze overnight, snowed in the morning, didn't realize how frozen the ground was, slipped and fell down my cement back steps, right onto a nice jagged piece of ice that like sliced the top of my eye open. So I ended up with probably avoided actually like a more serious concussion.
Oh, that's good.
I kind of like rolled to my front versus letting my head slam against the back of the cement steps.
Yeah.
But like got a nice gash and then a mild concussion out of it. So 3 stitches and then had a concussion for like a week.
You're going to need to start going Din style and wear a helmet wherever you walk around so you don't
I guess so.
Get another concussion. No, I think when you sent that text out, I think all 3 of us actually responded that we all slipped in one way or another on that same exact day.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Zach, maybe get a wand, Harry Potter style it,
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the mirror image right now or it's the true image. So what side is the scar on?
It's on my left, over my left eye.
Okay,
yeah.
It is over your left eye. Because Harry Potter's is over the right, right? I'm trying to remember.
Well, it's up over his right top of his forehead.
Okay.
I think. Yeah, and like it was actually kind of funny because I've been playing a lot of Hogwarts Legacy.
Oh, is that good?
And it's great. I love it. It's the wizard combat.
We don't condone or care about any of the politics behind it. So
yeah,
for the game.
The entertainment factor for the game itself.
Entertainment factor purely. It's really great. And like the wizard combat is actually surprisingly good. Like they've seemingly mastered like spell casting from the Harry Potter world, and it feels really, really fun. Like to the point where I was telling someone at work today, because we were talking about some other game that I'm working on, but I was like, there's stealth in the game, but like I have no desire to use it at all because I just have way more fun just running straight into battle and just hurling curses at people. Like it's just really fun.
Heck yeah. Well, and
not nailed like Hogwarts and like,
oh really?
It's Hogwarts.
Do you get to go through the school and everything?
Yeah. It's like, I find myself, and I find this rare in some games, like I find myself taking like screenshots of just like the backgrounds and like the sunset over the Hogwarts grounds. Like it's pretty impressive. And just like the little details that they put in there, like Peeves, who's one of the ghosts in Harry Potter, he flies around and causes chaos like in the castle. Like, so I think early on in the game I was like walking through a hallway and then Peeves the ghost is just juggling fire. Like I'm like, this is awesome. Like just that small detail was really fun.
That is awesome. Yeah, I might have to check that out. So if you're listening to this and you haven't tried it out, it gets Zach's approval. So play it for yourself.
Good.
I've heard good things about the game. I've been playing that Dead Space remake. I actually just beat it on like
You're playing Bad Batch or
Dead Space?
You said the Dead Space remake, and I know we were talking about how Bad Batch was a lot like Dead Space. So
I ripped off Dead Space a little bit.
I was just making a joke.
I must have missed that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was great. I mean, it's very violent and gory, and a lot of what I remember. And then there's some side quests that explain the story even better. So very, very good. There's 3 Dead Space games, I think, and maybe like a 4th like side game. So the story gets fleshed out pretty good. It's pretty cool.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't been playing much, but I am waiting for the next Star Wars Jedi game, so Survivor, to come out.
So let's talk about that.
We're like 2 weeks away. 3 weeks away.
No, we're more than that. It's April 28th. So we're
yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Away.
My math's a little off.
Let me tell you how I know that.
Well, before we okay, we'll just do this and then we'll do the news. So go ahead. Take it away, Dustin.
I'm sorry, I just thought it was the perfect segment for this.
It was.
So I read Battle Scars. And when I say I read it, I mean I listened to it on audiobook.
Same thing.
And again, I'm just gonna say this about audiobooks is I can listen to them when I get some downtime in my workday and on my commute. So I can finish a book in 3 days. Right?
Yeah.
So Battle Scars. I just also want to start off by saying this is going to sound negative because it is negative because the book was awful. Like I would give it 1 out of 5 stars. And
is it the story? Is it the right? Well, I'm sure the answer is going to be all of it.
Name it. It is like the audiobook itself was read, I think, poorly. Like
okay.
Some of the like he gets Grease down like perfect, and maybe that's his actual voice, but the other characters I didn't think the voice acting or
so it's hard to put yourself into that story with what you know about the characters and how they sound.
Yeah, that's number 1. Number 2, the writing is horrendous. It reads like a YA book, and it's not a YA book. And there's so many, and I know the young kids like to say this, cringy like things that are in the audiobook. It's even worse too, because you're like, oh god, like was that really what she wrote? Because the gal's name is, I think, Sam Maggs is the writer. And I mean, She might be a great writer, but she missed it on this one. I think she missed the vibe of Star Wars. And then there's a really contrived love story in the middle of the book, and I'm not going to get into it because I know you want to.
I bet I could guess.
I think we could all guess based on they kind of seed that with the first game.
Cal and the Night Sister?
No.
Oh, it's not.
No, it is not.
They're saving it for this game.
Probably.
Yeah.
I just don't understand. Like it's so out of left field. This romance. So I was reading some of the Audible reviews, and they're like,
Cal and Grease.
This is like a bad romance now.
Yeah.
It's it's everything is bad about it, man. And I just got done with it. I'm like, man, I'm just glad I'm done with this. And this story is completely inconsequential. Like,
yeah,
no, one thing happens that you might see in the game, and it's cosmetic.
So you don't think it really has that much of importance on
Zero
what leads the characters from the
importance.
first game to this next one?
Zero.
Mm.
They do not. I mean, and you knew this is where it was going. Like when you start reading the book, you're like, well, obviously we know no characters are going to die that are in the second game because they're in the game.
Yeah,
which is fine, fair. But like they go on this mission, and you find out real quickly that like there's nothing that's going to happen with this mission that's going to be anything that moves the story forward.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what happens. So you're like, well, that was a waste of 10 hours.
So it's kind of just a cash crop, just using the name Star Wars Jedi and capitalizing on the fans of the game, trying to get the sales of the book, you think? I mean, that's kind of what Star Wars is in general.
Yeah, they
merchandising.
They do it all the time. I mean, they did it with that Luke Skywalker book, that takes place in between Empire and Return of the Jedi, where it's like, hey, guess what? Luke has a yellow lightsaber for a hot minute. That's and then this
let's
doesn't
sell
really
a yellow
like,
lightsaber
the only
now.
thing that's like interesting in that entire book, like I read that one too. It's like kind of similar where like just nothing happens.
Yeah. And to your point, Dustin, about, the author might not be a bad author. I think that's happening kind of frequently, at least lately, with the Star Wars books that we've been receiving, because I've read a lot of Claudia Gray's stuff, and she usually writes a lot of good books. But the recent High Republic book that I read by her just was not that great. Was that the one?
The Falling Star.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
I was just not impressed by that at all. And
Falling Star gets like way better score
comparatively, yes. And
I'm sorry, this is hot garbage. Like there's nothing that was executed well except maybe Gree's voice acting, because it sounds exactly like him.
And I think it's a pretty short book too, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's a 10-hour audio book. I think it's maybe a 300-page book. So, the one thing that bothers me is, in the game, right? Like, you're running from the Inquisitors, but you can fight them, right? And you're not getting their opinion of things. It's just come across as so weak in the book.
Yeah.
Like, an Inquisitor comes and they're like, well, we're gonna die.
Is the main baddie the fifth brother in that?
Correct. Yep.
And we know he survives.
Of course, right? Because he's in
so he's got plot armor, and
was he in Obi-Wan, right?
He was in Kenobi. But I'm trying to think, that probably takes place. Well, I guess I don't know the timeline of the book. But those wouldn't be too far from each other, right?
Probably not, no.
But he's also in Rebels, which Rebels takes place, I believe, a little bit further down the timeline after that book, probably.
Yeah, so if there are any listeners that listen to me right now and have any contrary thoughts, I'm happy to hear them. I think if you can avoid the book, just avoid it, because there's nothing that's going to bridge the gap for you, really, from the first game, Fallen Order, to Survivor. So,
sure. Well,
as Peter Griffin would say, I just saved you 12 boobless hours.
It was funny. When you texted what you said about the book to us today, that's the quote I actually thought of right away, was the Peter Griffin one. Because
you and I, our brains are like synced.
Right, exactly.
So anyway, that's all I got to say about it. That's all I got to say about that.
I think you're right, though, because I know we were talking about this through text in the group, that I just feel like the books in general have kind of been, as I put it to you guys, like they're more being Disneyfied, and they're just not as captivating anymore. And even the first High Republic books I thought were really good, but there's just been a span of like the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 books that have been coming out that just have been really missing the marks. And it's like,
High Republic book was awesome, man.
It was amazing.
There's so much tension and suspense.
Yeah, I was so excited for the High Republic stuff reading that. And even the first YA book, like I've told you before, the YA book reads more adult than many of the following adult books in the High Republic. And
do you know what the other books remind me of? Like a really bad B horror movie.
Yeah.
Like you're watching as a fan and you're like, it's that Geico commercial. We're like, why don't we just get in the running car? And like,
yeah.
Oh, we got to go to the bar.
The chainsaws. We're the chainsaws.
That's kind of what it's like. It's like it's so clearly like contrived, and and the characters are so dumb.
Yep. Well, and I've read all 3 of the newer High Republic ones, so the ones with the blue labels. So Convergence, and then I forget what the first YA book is called. And then there's that audio book, which is like in script format, and it's the Battle of Jeddah. And they're all following just a similar formula. Like there's a bad event that happens, and they go trying to seek out who causes it. And the person who causes it is like amongst the people that are part of the story. And even in the audio book, it's the character's voice is really like grungy and like, rah, rah, rah. It's like, oh, so this is probably the bad guy. Come to find out, it's the bad guy. It's like, it's so predictable. And it's just so elementary. And I actually was kind of getting tired of the High Republic books. So I went back and I started reading the second book of the second Thrawn series, so Alliances. And it's like a world of a difference, man. Like it's so much better.
Those 3 books are so good.
Is that Drew Kapasian? Is that the guy who writes that?
No, it's Steve Zahn.
Yeah.
Steve Zahn.
Zahn.
Yeah.
Or sorry, not Steve, Timothy Zahn.
Timothy Zahn, that's right.
Yeah, he did the original Thrawn trilogy, and which the best move ever. Like those are the best original, in my opinion, the best original Star Wars books ever. Like the original Thrawn trilogy. To bring him back and just have him basically write Thrawn in canon was awesome. Like that trilogy is so solid. I'm excited for you to get to book 3. Book 3, I think book 2 is probably the best one, but like book 3 is pretty good too.
So it kind of follows the original trilogy style. Like the first one's really good, the second's the best, and then the third one's right up there too.
Yeah, all the Thrawn and it's so good.
But
it's so good.
So the Ascendancy ones are not as good though, because the first trilogy is like Heir of the Empire. I forget the name of the other 2 ones.
Is it Dark Force Rising?
Yes, Dark Force Rising.
Third one is like my Star Wars nerd flag should be taken away for not knowing these books.
I read all 9 of them, and I don't remember honestly.
Because in the second trilogy is Thrawn Alliances, and then Thrawn Treason, and then there's the 3 Ascension books that follow for the third trilogy.
Yeah, so it's Heir of the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and Last Command. Last Command. Yeah. And then the third trilogy, technically it's the second trilogy because the first one was not canon anymore.
Sure.
Is like, I don't know. I've had a hard time. The first one was okay. Like I got through that one. The second, like they just read to me like Star Trek books, and I just or like Star Trek, and I appreciate that saga.
So what does that mean? What does that mean?
Just very, to me, it's like they went really in depth into the chiss and the politics in the chiss.
Okay.
And all of these chiss characters that like I don't really care that much about.
Okay.
Like I love Thrawn, and like that's why I like the original 3 is like Thrawn is a great character, but like his lieutenant's great in that, and then you've got obviously like the cool interwovenness of the iconic characters from the Star Wars saga. And this one you don't have any of the any iconic characters. It's like Thrawn and a bunch of chess characters, which it's the downside to Thrawn is like it's sort of like the chiss to me are kind of like a little bit like Spock's race in Star Trek, like, and that's kind of a little
very
bit
analytical and
very sort of, and when you have a bunch of characters like that and no emotion or no heart, like I didn't find it like the story all that compelling.
Okay.
So I've had a hard time with it. I keep starting and stopping it, like the second book, and I've been doing that for like probably a year now. Like I keep reading a little bit, putting it down, reading something, like finishing a whole nother book, and then I started a little bit. I'll finish it now. Yeah, and I keep doing that behavior.
So what's the next book you're going to read? And first of all, shout out to Commander Chris Stinger. He says sup. So what's up? Back to you. So what's the next book for you on the docket?
Star Wars wise?
Yeah, Star Wars wise.
I probably will dive into the High Republic. Like that's probably where I will go next, because I just want to see. Although I don't love the fact that they did the trilogy and then like we're just gonna go back way into the distant past and just do a completely different story, because like the third book kind of ends on a cliffhanger a little bit.
Yeah, and you're not reading the YA books for that, right? You're just reading
you're
looking
stuff
for convergence then, right?
Yeah.
Good luck.
So I'll probably do that, or I might go back into the non-canon stuff, honestly, like and dip into some stuff that I never read.
What's that?
Oh yeah, I haven't read those actually. I should go
what are you doing?
and do
that should
those.
be your next book.
Yeah.
Series.
Which books?
Yeah.
The Bane trilogy.
Oh, Bane trilogy. Yeah, I want to read those ones too. I think you gave me one of the books, Dustin. I think you gave me the first one.
Yep. Very, very good.
So what are you going to read next? Are you going to read the Ascension ones then, Dustin, if you hadn't? read those?
I'll be honest with you. After Battle Scars, I think I need a break.
A break from Star Wars.
Yeah. It broke me. There was a comment on the Audible reviews that said literally, this book broke me. I can't. Like, that's been dramatic.
What was how many stars did it get? Did you say?
Well, you have to give it at least 1. There's no 0 stars.
Right.
I would give it in real life 0 stars.
What was the audience like overall?
2.5.
2.5. Oh, that's bad.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Some people
that's really bad.
Reviews for certain things. You'll figure it out, when you read it.
That's fair.
Baffled that they could take a property and a story as well received as Fallen Order, and it's a good thing they did in book form, because if this was the actual video game content that we were getting, it would be really, really disappointing.
I have high hopes for the game, though. I don't think they'll miss the mark on the game.
No, I don't. I mean,
all they really, even if they just followed a similar formula to the first game, it'll be successful, just because the gameplay alone was so good in that first game. But hopefully we get a good story out of it too. I think that's important. So I just wanted to go over one little news item, and then we'll dive into Mandalorian. But so I feel like, again, this is just common news we keep receiving time after time again, but
time.
Sing it, Dustin.
I don't know the lyrics, but
that's good enough. It's good enough for me to recognize what you're singing. But so the untitled Star Wars movie that Damon Lindelof was going to write, along with Justin Britt Gibson, they have departed from it now. And Stephen Knight is to take over writing the script. And he is known for Peaky Blinders, Closed Circuit, Dirty Pretty Things, Eastern Promises, and The Girl in the Spider's Web. I'm not familiar with most of those, so that kind of makes me nervous. But at the same time, I feel like they're just gonna drop this person eventually as well, push back any other progression from the movie and whatnot, and we're all over this again. I mean, Zach, you were talking about how we feel like any movie for Star Wars right now is just feels like it's not going to happen outside of the Waititi films. So yeah, because even the Rogue Squadron now, I know that one kept going back and forth, and that one seems like it's not going to happen.
I think it's
anymore.
Officially canceled now.
Yeah.
Like, I think there was like some dispute, and then I think Patty Jenkins was like, "Oh, it's not canceled. Like, Lucasfilm's being really flexible with like my want to do Wonder Woman 3." And then like Wonder Woman 3 was canceled with the gun like DC rehashing, I think. And then I think
I got plenty of time to do this now. No.
Yeah, I got plenty of time. And then they're like, "Oh, just kidding." Like, it seems like I think that's for sure been canceled, from my understanding. If
they just took like Rogue Squadron and made it like the Top Gun formula, I think that would work really well.
Yeah, I think
right, like you have like a rogue trainer, and he doesn't play by the rules, but he gets the job done.
His name's Rick Mav.
Yeah.
No, I'd be just give me dang it, Rick Mav. Just give me some like dogfights, like what we saw in not this episode of Mandalorian, but the episode before. Like, that's what gets me excited about Star Wars. And I think I've said this like a long time ago on one of our episodes, but I mean, the name of it is Star Wars. I mean, it's about battles and fighting and like space. I know there's a lot more depth to everything, but what gets me excited is when you're seeing like the fighting, dogfights, space battles, all that stuff. So I want to see more of that. Like Rogue One, great movie. It's a little slow at the beginning, but the last half of that movie was exactly what I'm looking for out of Star Wars. But hopefully we'll get some kind of film at some point, because I think they got to tap back into that business. Because I think, at least from my opinion,
people are going back to the movies too. Like, look at Avatar: Way of Water. I mean, that thing did insanely well.
Yeah. Well, I think people are getting tired of waiting, a week for 30 more minutes of episode. and just you're playing this continuously playing this waiting game and waiting game and waiting game. They'd rather invest like 2 to 3 hours to sit in one place to get the full story and be done with it and get excited for the next a year, a couple years down the road versus, waiting a week. The flip side of that is we would get more material and content through the streaming services like we've been getting. So it's a little give and take there, but maybe they can find a balance, release a movie once every couple of years, and then maybe just a couple shows instead of having tons of different shows. So would you guys agree?
Yeah, I'd like that formula a little bit. Like I would like to see like more big blockbuster Star Wars films. It doesn't feel like that's what Disney wants to do with it though. Like I think even their CEOs multiple times have said they believe that the future of Star Wars is streaming. So like I'm not super surprised that we keep seeing the movies get canceled or like seems to be sort of in developmental hell, like because they seem to be focusing more on the show anyways, and like the TV series and that being the model for distributing Star Wars, which I think is kind of a shame a little bit too, because it's like if you take what you will about the sequel saga and like the gripes we all have with it, those movies still made a ton of money at the box office. Like, yeah. So there's still demand out there. Like, so I think they should do it. It's just, I get it. It's probably going to be difficult when you're likely doing movies without the Skywalkers and like without the main saga characters like that. Yeah. I can imagine is a tough thing to top or like figure out how you rebring the cinematic universe to life.
Yeah. But I would just also argue that I mean, Star Wars was made for the big screen.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
That's what it was intended for. That's the whole experience of it. I get what they mean by the future of Star Wars is in streaming services and whatnot. Like, I understand that. And I mean, they have been coming out with some successful stuff through the streaming services as well. But there's just also been a lot of misses and whatnot. So I know some people call them filler episodes. I'll call them plot building. But sometimes they're not plot building though. But I don't know. It's bring me back to the big screen, man. I want that full experience and the full story in front of me. So should we dive into Mandalorian now?
Well, the episode was you blink and you missed it. Pretty short.
32 minutes, and that's the whole runtime. So that's credits at the end and everything. I need more than that. I need more than when the Bad Batch episode was 29 minutes and the Mandalorian episode was 32 minutes. That's a miss in my book. But because I feel like those animated ones are supposed to be that 22 to 25 minute mark, and then like 45 to 50 minutes for the live action. But
I just don't get why the Mandalorians picked a planet where all these creatures are trying to kill them.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same.
Don't you want to train?
Easier to hide. No one wants to go to these planets because they're inhabited by all these creatures. Hey, but it reminded me of what is it, the Fallen Kingdom Jurassic Park movie, when the pterodactyl literally came and picked up that woman, and then that water creature came and like grabbed it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was
the first of like the Fallen Kingdom ones, right? Mm-hmm. With Chris Pratt. Yeah. That's how I felt about that.
There's like that GIF, that meme where the guy's like grabbing both of his margaritas when they attack. Have you seen this?
For Jurassic Park?
Yeah.
I don't know if I've seen it. Maybe I have, but I just don't know what you're talking about.
So they're in the park, right? When those pterodactyls come.
Yeah.
And there's a scene, and I mean, you got to pay attention to it. Like the pterodactyls are coming, and this guy like gets up from the table and grabs both of his margaritas.
Priorities, man. They were probably at least like $30 margaritas at that park. So
yeah. So I thought that was kind of funny. Yeah, you can look. I'll send it to you, Mike, after the episode.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. All right, so we'll kind of just do a little bit of breakdown, and as I speak through these, just bring your comments and your opinions about it. So we start off converted with Mandalorian's training, so mostly foundlings, doing some fighting. There's probably about 100 or so of the Mandalorians, which I feel like the group keeps growing and growing. I don't know if it's bringing in foundlings or if there's always been that many and we're just now seeing them. And Grogu is kind of playing with rocks, and Din tells Grogu that he needs to go train with the other foundlings instead of playing. And then Ragnar, which if you remember is the kid that was being initiated before they were attacked in the first chapter of the season, is challenged by Grogu, or more specifically, Din wants Grogu to challenge him. And Ragnar chooses guns as his weapons. And Ragnar claims that Grogu is just too young. He shouldn't be fighting. He's not even wearing a helmet. And Din kind of defends this, saying that he doesn't even speak yet, so he can't recite the creed. So because of that, he doesn't need to wear a helmet to conceal his face yet. And then the Grogu and the kid are then armed. They each get like this wrist gun that shoots 3 darts, and the objective is to hit your opponent as many times as possible. You get 1 point for each hit, and then the one with the most points at the end wins. Kid gets the first 2, and then when attempting the third one, Grogu does like a force jump type thing to get out of the way, and then hits him with all 3 darts to win. So interesting and fun to see kind of Grogu starting to train a little more. I know you saw him train with the Force with Luke, but now we're getting some Mandalorian training, which is giving you that feeling that he's becoming more like a Mandalorian. So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah. Just a little bit of a training montage, right? I don't know. The Grogu stuff, it was cute at first, but now I'm kind of like, it looks kind of goofy, like a little puppet moving around. I guess like the original excitement of Grogu, and they call him Baby Yoda. His name's Grogu, of course.
Yeah,
I think that's worn off, and now I'm like, is this kid ever gonna grow? Like, it's like South Park, where like the kids remain the same age. We're
right.
in three seasons now. Now they obviously age much differently, but it would be nice to see him like age throughout the season.
Well, do you think this supports that rumor that Favreau didn't want Grogu to be a part of the story anymore at this point? Like, his vision was that Grogu would be handed off to Luke, and then that was kind of the end of the story.
Yeah,
but then
like, whoa, this guy makes too much money.
But then Lucasfilm was like,
way too much money.
But then Lucasfilm was like, we want him still part of the story for merchandising, making money. So Favreau, you got to keep him in. So do you think this kind of supports the rumors that maybe Grogu wasn't really supposed to be in this? Because I know Greg brought that up in one of our recordings, and that how Grogu fits into this season kind of seems like you could do with or without him. Like, he's not really a central figure within these episodes. He's just kind of like a tag along character. What are your thoughts?
I mean, my big disappointment is that they did take him from Luke, and now he doesn't complete his training to become a really powerful Jedi. That seems like a huge miss for, like, in the universe. It feels like a huge miss for the galaxy. Like Din Djarin's kind of doing everyone a disservice by taking him away from his destiny.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, I don't. That's the thing I keep wondering. I'm like, I don't really know what they're doing with Grogu yet. Is he gonna go back to Luke? Is he gonna be a Mandalorian? It feels like they're like, oh no, he's just gonna be a Mandalorian now. I'm like, that feels kind of
like a waste,
like a miss.
Yeah.
Like it's just and I think part of it too is like, that was like my favorite part of Book of Boba Fett was the Mandalorian 2.5. Like,
yeah.
Like the Luke and Grogu scenes. I'm like, this is great. Like, I just, my biggest complaint about that was like how short it was. And I'm like, they could have totally done that in season 3 and just smattered that in, like, very sporadically, like to show that, hey, time is progressing and like he's slowly training. And it also feels like he's still, I mean, you see instances where it's like, can he actually like use the Force really? Like, where he's just like kind of like that rock scene, like where it looks like he's just like super weakly moving it.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I think the interpretation was he wasn't using the force. It was just like these creatures under the sand that he was like watching and potentially going to eat. I think that was supposed to be the interpretation of that scene, but sometimes I'm just like, oh, is he just kind of this weak character? And like then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, he's a Jedi. Like, because like you saw him flipping and jumping around a bunch, which I would like to see more of that. Like, I think that would be cool. I kind of hope that he just ends up back with Luke, and there's something that he has to do first, like to help the Mando on his journey, and like maybe that's the end of his journey at the end of the series, that he ends up back with Luke.
But do you think Luke would actually allow him back in because of the whole attachment thing?
I think so. I don't know. This is the this is my problem. Yeah, this is my problem with sequel saga Luke, is they've made him very black and white Jedi when I'm like, did you guys watch the OT?
Right.
Like, look at how many attachments Luke has himself. Like, I don't know. I mean, the whole end of Return of the Jedi, like the reason, I mean, he's trying to protect Han and Leia like that whole time. Like, just I don't want to get into this again, but like that's the thing where I'm like, I just don't understand this sort of dogma flip on Luke. So I hope that would be the case, and I think part of it too is I'm still holding out hope for like the secret Jedi Academy thing. That Luke had, like one of Luke's academies was the one that Kylo Ren destroyed, but that he hid others throughout the galaxy, and I think that would be really cool.
Well,
to see that come to life. There's
got to be other types of academies, whether they're run by Luke or not, just from the path alone that we get introduced to from Obi-Wan Kenobi. So there's
definitely, seems like they're seeing that in if you watch the last trailer for Jedi Survivor, it kind of seems like that's like the plot line, like where they're trying to find somewhere to like a safe haven almost.
Did you see that someone spotted in the trailer that that Jedi, that Survivor, is wearing a cloak that's got the High Republic emblem on it?
No.
So that, at least that's what the post proclaimed. I don't know if anything was like doctored up to make it look like it, but I saw that. So
that's interesting.
It piqued and it makes sense since they're coming out with all these High Republic stuff that they'll tie it in one way or another into the current content. But but just going back really quickly to your comment about Book of Boba Fett, like, and those last couple of episodes with Luke and Mando and Grogu, again, I think that was all part of Lucasfilm, maybe going against Favreau's original plan, and this is the way that they could bring back Grogu into the story to continue him on with Din. So someone knows what the original intent was for this show. Someone out there knows. I would love to find that out. And I wonder if we get to the point like after Kathleen Kennedy is gone, because we know we've talked about this before, how that might be coming sooner than we know it. But I want someone to come out and say what the actual plan was, or Favreau to say what his initial plan was for the show. I would pay to hear that.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that too. And like, I'm curious to see what they end up doing with. I mean, I like the Mandalore focus on season 3. Like, I think that could be very compelling. I just feel like we're getting distracted from that story with like these random, like this episode, which I generally like. I liked the initial showcasing of Grogu's backstory, but I feel like we're getting too sidetracked from like, it was like the episodes where they went back to Mandalore and saw the ruins of Mandalore. I'm like, this is cool. Like, I want to see more of that. Not to knock, there's been a lot of online knocks, obviously, of was it like one of the first Mandalore episode being so dark.
It was the second episode.
Yeah.
So I just find it funny. They do the flashback of Order 66, and you got 4 Jedi versus like 20 troopers, and they just go down like a sack of potatoes. I'm like, I know they're probably like Jedi Knights, not Jedi Masters, but seriously, like how? And they're in a corridor. Like, You can't block those lasers. Meanwhile, you're Cal Kestis and Jedi, Fallen Order, and you're taking out hundreds of them. I know it's a video game. I know it's not the same. It's just they make the Jedi seem so weak.
They make some Jedi look weak, and then they make others look very capable, which is interesting.
Really,
I
really wanted Anakin to be at the end of that elevator. I was bummed a little bit, but I get it. I get why he wasn't.
Yeah, but it was also pretty cool what they did there with who did end up showing up, which I'll get to here in a second. I think it was great for him because all the undeserved, backlash that he got for his other character portrayal within the prequels, which I'll get to. But so next, after this like training montage that they went through, this pterodactyl creature comes down and picks up Ragnar and flies away with him, taking it to its lair. And the Mandalorians try to pursue the pterodactyl, but their jetpacks run out of fuel. So then they fall to the ground, but then you see Bo-Katan's ship continue in pursuit, following it. And then they all kind of regroup. Bo-Katan says that she's located the lair and that they need to go back to rescue the kid, but no jetpacks, no ships or loud weapons, because any noise will give indication to the creature that they're coming and could kill the kid. So they then go off to retrieve the kid. The armorer is then shown telling Grogu to follow her, that they need to go to the forge to take care of matters if he wants to become a true Mandalorian. And she starts like forging a piece of armor. And when doing this, she says the forge exposes weaknesses. And it was kind of symbolic because then Grogu, you see, start kind of pondering. He looks like he's being, a little distraught. And then we get a cutscene to Order 66, back to where we last saw the clones attacking the Jedi and Grogu kind of being protected. And to Dustin's point, there's 4 Jedi there that pretty easily get taken down, but Grogu gets pushed into an elevator just in time. Elevator goes down, opens back up, and there's Ahmed Best is his name. Is that?
Yep.
The actor who played the one and only Jar Jar Binks, which was really cool.
Redeemed in live action,
right? Well, and I love that, there was all the speculation with like Darth Jar Jar or does Jar Jar have any force abilities because of some things that happen in the Phantom Menace? Well, now Jar Jar does have force abilities, being a Jedi, and he's the one that rescues Grogu. So any further thoughts on that? I know, Zach, like you just said, you really wanted it to be Anakin. But it was not. It was Jar Jar.
Well, not Anakin. I wanted Anakin to.
Or sorry, he was the one attacking.
Yeah,
you're right. That's what I meant.
But yeah,
who did you think was going to rescue him?
I kind of
I was thinking it was Quinlan. I always thought it was going to be Quinlan, but
I thought it was going to be Quinlan too. And I still think that because he says that line where I'm meeting friends or something to that effect. Yeah, and I'm like, oh, so Quinlan might still be in play here.
But the friends were just like wasn't that like the Naboo Guard?
Yeah, it might be the Naboo Guard. Was, I thought, interesting. That was like, I thought, the most intriguing part of that whole sequence, that he gets away on like a Nubian starfighter. Like it's the same one that Padme has in Revenge of the Sith, or like a very similar model. Like
I'm spacing on this.
Because for a second, I was like, oh, I wonder if Padme had something to do with, like, that she was maybe secretly helping some of the Jedi. I don't know if the timelines would work out, though. I also, for a second, like, thought that when they were on the speeder bike, I'm like, what if Mace Windu just like they rescue Mace Windu? And I'm like, nope, that doesn't work. I'm like, that happens well before this scene. But I was just kind of holding out hope that we would see a Mace Windu resurrection somehow.
I'm sure that he was one of the ones on people's wish lists for who rescued. He was on my wish list. I just didn't think it was that probable. I really thought the high probability along with the wish list was going to be Quinlan. I thought he had just with, again, going back to the Obi-Wan Kenobi show and the path, like it just kind of made sense to me that that's who it would be, but it wasn't. And now we have to wonder what's going to happen to this Jedi and where is he? Because we see in this that he gets Grogu so that he fends off the clone troopers that are fighting that are attacking them, gets on one of the speeders from the clones and flies away. And then they get pursued by more clone troopers.
They probably will just.
Well, they won't say anything about it. You probably won't see him again, unfortunately. And they make their way to a landing platform where there's a ship with a bunch of. Were those just like Coruscant guards or who were they?
The Naboo guards.
They were Naboo guards.
Okay, so they were
the same stuff in episode 1.
Okay, yeah, and their blasters make that same sound from episode 1 too.
Okay, so now I'm connecting to what you guys are. I wasn't following at first where you were talking about with those guards, but that makes sense. So and then
I'm pretty sure the ship he's in is the same the identical model,
same material, at least the same material of the exterior of the ship.
Yeah.
So they arrive to these guards. The Jedi tells them what's going on. They believe him. They're like, okay, our ship is fueled and ready to go. Just take it. So they do, right when they're being attacked, and Grogu gets, escorted safely away from the situation. So, very interested to see next. Are we going to get more flashbacks after this, or is this the last flashback? All we need to know about Order 66 and Grogu, or is this a well do you think they're going to keep diving into?
I don't know. It was pretty disappointing because that was a scene that everyone was like really hyped up about during the trailer, and then it's like, well, that was short and boring.
Yeah. So what did the clones use to get into the door?
I don't know.
Probably that same. I think we've seen sequences where they like blast doors open like that. I don't know exactly what the material is, but I think we've seen that before. Because
it looks like a saber cut, when you
it does.
You cut through. So it just makes me wonder what was actually being used. It would have been cool if, like you said, if Anakin was right there.
I wanted it to be Anakin. Yeah.
All right.
Opportunity missed.
The other thought that was being sent around the rumorville was that scene from the trailer, or this one that we saw today, was actually predating further into history, and was actually what's the Vizsla that was the Jedi Mandalorian, the first Jedi Mandalorian, Taz Vizsla or
Tar Vizsla?
Tar Vizsla. I think Tar Vizsla is correct, and that it was actually going to be Tar Vizsla with the Darksaber cutting through to retrieve his armor or something like that from the Jedi that took it from him. So. But it wasn't that
interesting.
So yeah, after the kind of flashback, we cut back to the armor who forged like an armor piece, which was like a shield kind of a thing. Not a shield, but I don't know what, a chest plate, breastplate of something, with the Mudhorn symbol on it. And she says it's too big for him, but he'll grow into it. And she officially dubbed him.
Yeah, and then like
Foundling Grogu. Yeah. Did anyone else think when she was forging the thing for Bo that she was going to ask for a Mudhorn and the Night Owl?
I was thinking that was super anticlimactic too, where she's like, I think I saw a mythosaur. She's like, okay, this is the way.
Yeah, very ambiguous in her response. Like, it really made you think, is the arm, or did she actually see it, or did she think she saw it?
I don't know. That was a weird scene, though. It's like, this is the way.
I think she actually saw it. I just don't know.
I do too. This goes back to the discussion Dustin and I had last episode, or our last recording. I think she still wants to rule Mandalore. I think she still wants the sword or the Darksaber. I think she still wants the throne. And I think she's hiding the fact at least from Din, and being vague about this with the armor, that she wants to use that to her advantage in order to take back Mandalore. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think like we're kind of seeing her a little bit of her redemption story almost.
Yeah.
Like I get the feeling that like she's on now the path to reclaim that leadership role in a way that I think is not going to be complementary to Din's journey. And so what I mean by that is like I don't think there's, for a little bit I thought there might be like a battle between those two, but I don't see that happening anymore. I think it's more of like she's the only thing that doesn't jive with that, like my thinking, is why she didn't say to Din like, hey, I saw Mythosaur when I was saving you. And maybe she just thought like that maybe it's more along the lines of like she thought she hallucinated it, like, and didn't really see it.
I think, and I'm just totally my thoughts, I think she still wants to fight Din to take that saber, but I don't think she thinks it's the right time yet. I think maybe Grogu being with him kind of intimidates that situation, knowing that he does have the force powers, and if she was just fighting Din, maybe she thinks she can take him, but taking Din and Grogu might be a different challenge. But to counter that, then why would she help Grogu go find Din? I don't know. But I think she just doesn't think it's the right time. Maybe she wants more Mandalorian support and Mandalorian followers. So getting in with Din gets her connected with this whole other clan of Mandalorians, and she's obviously earning their trust. She was the one that essentially led the party to retrieve Ragnar Vizsla. And even at the end of the episode, the armorer said, you have redeemed your clan's name. And they're looking to her just as one of their own now. So
yeah,
I think she's playing the long game on this. There's still something up with her.
Yeah.
There's something in the back of my head that she's going to turn or something at some point.
And by the way, going back to the Ragnar rescue, like the timing didn't really add up to me, that the pterodactyl creature like took the kid and then didn't go right back to the nest. Like, did he stop at like a pterodactyl bar, on his way? Oh, I don't want to. I got 3 kids to feed, and I need a couple beers.
And she spit up Ragnar, right?
Yeah. Which also,
and they waited overnight because they set camp. So was Ragnar just in this belly of this pterodactyl for like, I don't know, 24 hours or what?
And also, I love how they're like, "We killed your mom. Come with us as little pets."
Yeah.
And the pets were like, "Okay, we'll go along with this," which obviously they're going to use to train these, and they're going to probably fly them around now. That's my guess.
Yeah. No, it was funny, Dustin. Like I had the same thought though. Like right at the beginning of the episode when the pterodactyl creature came down, I'm like, why do they live here? Like this is the second like massive creature attack in like 3 episodes. What's happening here?
It's like when we live in Minnesota. Like, why do I live in a place that hurts my face? I think about that a lot.
We've had a lot of like creature feature episodes in this season so far.
If you count them, it's a very X-Filey like track.
If you count the Mythosaur, that's the 3rd one now. And I think I saw. Were there other helmets of little foundlings in that nest? I thought I saw. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought I saw.
There was at least one. I saw one.
Yeah. And through this whole like rescue scene and whatnot, I think what's important was that it was claimed or proclaimed by was it Parvizsla? Is that the Berserker guy's name? The John Favreau? I always get the Vizslas mixed up. He stated that Ragnar is his son. And I think that's going to become important down the road with the clan Vizsla. We've already seen Parvizsla try to win the Darksaber over from Din. So how does Ragnar Vizsla, which I think is going to play a more larger role in when they start going into like sequel trilogy stuff. Like I know they've talked about having shows around sequel trilogy or even new movies that date afterwards, I think that's where this character might play a more important role, but we'll see. So that scene ends, they get rescued, they get brought back to the armor and the rest of the clan. You kind of get that armor exclaiming to Bo that she's redeemed her family's name or honored her family's name. And then Bo kind of talks about her vision of the mythosaur, and the armor is like, oh, I don't know if you actually saw it, but you know, it's a lucky thing to be able to have that vision. So they kind of go back and forth with that. And then they end with this is the way. So what led them to say this is the way? I missed that part.
That's what they always say.
Well, I know, but like, did they land on what was the armor saying right before she said that?
Because she said
this is,
she's like, I think it's a real mythosaur. She's like, this is the way.
Okay.
Well, she said this is she said even before that it was like this is what happens when you walk the path of the Mandalore.
Okay,
like, so that's why I was like, oh, okay, they're seeding this a little bit.
Okay. That makes sense. And then you've got the end of the episode. So I don't know. I thought there was a lot of meaningful stuff in this. I thought it was a lot of plot building, but I think it's something that once the full season has finished, maybe there'll be more meaning to it. I am having kind of a hard time with how much jumping around we've been doing in the few episodes that we've had, because last episode we had, you know, Dr. Parshing and his whole situation. We've had, you know, the Mandalore going to Mandalore, and now this. So I wish we could get on a singular path or linear path of the plot, which it's been kind of a challenge. And we only have 4 episodes left. So they're going to have to bring resolution to this pretty quickly. What do you guys think?
All I know is Ragnar needs to go to therapy after being in a pterodactyl's belly for over a decade.
Yeah. Well, and also like, I don't know, I'm getting nervous now. Like, I think my expectations are pretty high for this season, especially after like the end of season 2, like the big Luke moment. And like, I don't think anything's going to top that. Like, no. And I just have to come to terms with that. Like, because now I'm thinking like, oh, there's going to be this big moment at the end of season 3. And I think my thought is like, it's going to have some, and we might still get something like that where it's like a connection to Sabine. It might actually just be Sabine showing up. And I'm like, well, that's not going to be even remotely close to like the end of like the Luke reveal. Either that or like there'll be an Ezra reveal or something like that. I would think we'll get some sort of Rebels reveal at the end of this, but it's hard to see that based on how they're putting the season together so far, where it's so focused on Mandalore, where I'm like, well, logically Sabine would be the big cameo at some point.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think there's going to be probably some kind of connection with Rebels. I don't think it's going to be something like Thrawn, or I think they're going to save that for the Ahsoka show and bring a reveal in there. But I could see like going into next season, just with everything that's been going on, I think at some point you're going to get a Palpatine reveal. I think they're going to want to, we've been seeing that the shows have been trying to fill the gaps of the movies of like the plot holes or the questions that people have. And I think that whole, you know, somehow Palpatine returned, I think we're going to eventually get to the explanation behind that. And one of the reasons that I started feeling more that that's possible is in not this episode, but the last episode,
the Pershing. Yeah.
There's that scene where he's talking with the other Imperial girl, G68 or something like that. And if you listen to the background music, it's the same music that played in that scene where Anakin and Palpatine are watching that show. So like, here's your little like indication of where this could be going. So, and the whole Dr. Parshing story with cloning and everything, like it's leading to that. I don't think we're going to get to that this season, but I think it's something that we might get in the upcoming seasons. And Favreau, I think, said that he wants to do at least 5 seasons of the Mandalorian. So they've got some time to flush that out.
Mm-hmm.
But that could be another big reveal. It's not going to be as big as Luke Skywalker, especially to us. Luke Skywalker means to us. But that'd be another pretty big major reveal if you bring Palpatine back to live action. So,
or if you bring the Apprentice back, that would be cool. Because that could be a way where you're like, well, this is one of the failed cloning experiments on the way to Palpatine.
Yeah.
To figuring out how to master that type of technology.
Yeah, I'm all for any of that. What if they brought back Asajj Ventress? Because she's not dead, or we haven't seen her dead.
She's dead in the books, though, I thought.
Yeah, she dies at the end of.
I don't know if that was for sure though. In
Dark Disciple.
Dark Disciple. I don't know if that was.
I don't know if that book's canon anymore, though. I think you're right.
But I don't even know. I know we're led to believe she's dead, but I don't think they specifically.
You don't see it.
It's left
That's
up in
true.
the air. So who knows? You could see her come back one way or another. Another fallen apprentice of Palps. So
you guys on like first name basis. Yeah, it's my
yeah,
bro
Palps.
Palps.
Good old Palps. My bro Palps.
Guess what? You're not going to learn that from a Jedi, from Palps.
Not from a Jedi.
That's my favorite. I love that Palpatine or Ian McDiarmid was like, I heard him out loud when I was getting his autograph say that was his favorite scene.
The Darth Plagueis one.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that's my favorite too. I love that scene.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So anything else that we want to talk about with The Mandalorian before we dive into our next round of the bracket challenge? Hopefully the next episode is longer than 32 minutes.
Yeah, that was short.
Let's hope so.
There's only 4 left.
I know.
Halfway through.
And only 2 more Bad Batch episodes, right? I think they're both being released next week. So, and whenever they release 2 at a time, they're usually good ones. So this is one that we're going to want to pay attention to, I believe. And this week's was pretty good. You're going to want to watch this week's. All right, so let's get on to the bracket challenge. So we had our first matchup, which was matchup number 9, which was the 8-seeded Star Wars: The Old Republic. So SWTOR, not to be confused with KOTOR. Versus number 25, Star Wars: Lethal Alliance. And pretty one-way vote here. The Old Republic gets the nod, and we'll move on. Britton writes, hey, Dustin, you get a shout out here. Britton writes, thanks to Dustin, I checked out SWTOR. I heard him discussing gameplay. My first character was a smuggler gunslinger. Optimized? Probably not. Even nearly 20 years later, it captures a lot of the feel of KOTOR. Can the Star Wars-ness get lost in the grinding? Sure, but the dialogue and missions and feel capture that Star Wars-ness in gameplay. I even don't mind playing Sith. Surprisingly, most people seem cool and helpful, except for the light side Jedi. So darn aloof. I think he's taken that from us on how we've talked about how aloof the Jedi are, unaware of the things happening around them. So are you still playing SWTOR, Dustin?
No, not really. I mean, but the Eternal Empire expansion was some of the best video game storytelling I've ever experienced.
Nice. They remind you of Knights of the Old Republic?
Yes. And you know, obviously Revan gets brought up a lot in the game. In fact, there's actually an expansion where you fight Revan. So
okay.
That's cool.
The game is awesome. And there's a lot of like little lore things you get, you know?
Yeah.
And like August obviously is a big part of the expansions as well.
And not to tie back too much to what we were talking about earlier with Jedi Survivor, but in the new trailer that released, did anyone else think that mask kind of looked like Revan's mask? It wasn't the same one, but it greatly resembled the one he wore. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Which one? What was that?
The trailer that just released, I think it was it Monday that it released?
Yeah, the
final trailer.
Yeah. There's a looks like bounty hunter type character that's got a mask that's kind of like Revan. And he has a lightsaber. Yeah, and he has a lightsaber, and he's with the partner's like huge. It's like some big guy, but then the main guy that they're focusing on has a mask that greatly resembles that of Revan's. So
be interesting to see. And then the next matchup number 10 was number 9 Star Wars Rogue Squadron series. So not just Rogue Squadron, but all the games that were a part of that series. Versus number 24 Star Wars Obi-Wan. And this was actually a pretty close matchup, which surprised me. I haven't even played Obi-Wan. I think it was an Xbox game, so that's probably why. But Rogue Squadron wins the matchup, so that one will be
Rogue
moving
Squadron
on.
was so good.
Oh, it was
That was
one of my favorite N64
it's no
games.
Shadow of the Empire, but it was pretty close.
It was that one has a better replayability, Rogue Squadron, than
True.
Shadows of the Empire.
My big thing was getting the gold like rebellion symbol on each.
Oh yeah, you had to get gold.
Oh yeah.
It's like
Yep.
Candy Crush. You have to go back and get the golds or the all 3 stars. You can't just get one.
Isn't it crazy that like these greedy corporations have figured out our monkey brains so well? You know,
Hey,
they have all these games. So like Call of Duty and like Fortnite and these games that are selling like skins to these kids that are racking up $300 bills on their parents' credit card to buy them. It's all about addiction, man.
there's no one that works harder to figuring out you more than you know yourself than like Disney, and they're really good at it. That's why Disney will rule us all at some point. They're pretty much already there, but and then Britton has a comment here too. He says, "I remember playing Rogue Squadron on game."
Britton a part of the show. Like
I know, right?
You're invited. I mean, we'll boost Greg out of here because he hasn't been on for so long.
Being replaced by Britton. He says its gameplay was amazing and captured starfighter combat so well. The wingman controls goals were great, and it just felt Star Wars without needing multiplayer or co-op versus modes. Now, if only we had a working Wii or GameCube, I could bust out the disc again. And I think I played the first 2 games. I don't think I've played. There's a third one, I think.
There's a third one on GameCube.
Yeah,
there's 2 on GameCube. The first one on GameCube was that's in my opinion the best one.
Rogue Leader. That was the first GameCube one.
I think
that's
so,
the one that he was speaking to.
Yeah. Speaking of, I was just talking to a buddy the other day of like, why hasn't anyone done a remake of those games?
They tried with Squadrons.
Do that.
They tried with Squadrons.
But it's kind of not. But it's
not the same.
It's not the same. Like I'm just saying, like I want to do like a straight up remaster, like what they just did with Resident Evil 4 that's coming out on Friday.
That's right.
Like just take those games, package them into maybe a 2 or 3 pack, and just like up like
the graphics,
bring them up to today's technology, add a couple of little, gameplay improvements and re-release them. I think they'd sell.
Make them a little more challenging too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because those games were pretty easy to be honest. They were fun, but they were pretty easy. Shadows of the Empire, on the other hand, was a more challenging game.
Yeah, that was definitely harder. Like Super Empire Strikes Back.
I never played that. Was that one really hard? Is it?
It's so hard. I can't even beat the first level of that game.
I played the first one, but I haven't played the Empire Strikes Back one, so maybe I'll have to find that and give it a whirl. But Shadows of the Empire is relevant because it is the second matchup that we'll have for next week. So the first matchup coming for next week is number 4, Lego Star Wars series versus number 29, Star Wars Episode 1. It is interesting to me that the Lego series was number 4. Seems pretty high, but I know there is kind of a cult following to it. A lot of people love the Lego Star Wars games, so maybe that's why. And then matchup number 12 is number 13, Star Wars Shadows of the Empire, that we've been talking about from N64.
Number 13 in the rankings is number 1 in my heart.
There you go. And then it's going up against number 20, Star Wars Rebel Assault series. So I believe that one was mostly on Windows. I played the first one. Graphics were sketch, but I remember being able to like wield a lightsaber in that, and that was like one of the best. You didn't come across many guys to fight. I feel like there were barely any stormtroopers around, but just having a lightsaber was pretty awesome to have.
Yeah, that it had the old school like real life cinematics too. Do you remember that? Where it was
Yes,
like
that's right.
they had actors and stuff, but it was
Yeah.
like really shitty. Like,
Yeah.
That game was pretty fun. I liked that game. The B-Wing, like playing in the B-Wing 2 was cool.
Yeah.
That's Rebel Assault 2.
Yeah.
I
Is there 3 of those as well? I know there's.
I think you're right.
I think there's 3. But
The second one is the one I played a lot of.
And they were all computer, right? They were all Windows.
Yeah, they're all computer games.
Yeah.
I think there was only 2 of them.
Okay.
Oh God. I just like Googled it and like some of the screenshots popped up and
you're being
like,
taken back.
God, I remember this. Yeah. Well, it was pretty cool. Like it was like you hid behind stuff and you jump up and shoot. And,
yeah.
I remember like that being really fun too, because when you shot the stormtroopers, like the hole would burn into them and then they'd fall over. Oh, and there's also this like, you could shoot them into a disintegrator. That was awesome. And they would just evaporate. Man, I have a lot of fun memories with that game.
Oh man. So which one are you don't reveal it to us now, but
I won't.
Which one are you going to vote for if you got some fond memories for both of them here?
Yeah.
It's going to be a challenge. But we will reveal that to everyone next week, following the next episode or next chapter of The Mandalorian. So any final thoughts before we cut off here from either one of you guys?
That's a wrap for me, dog.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
I love that you got the trap comment. It's a trap being spoken to. I'm spacing on their creature name from the previous, not this week's episode, but last week's, when Dr. Parshing's being held down and he was saying that it was a trap that G68 brought him to where the Star Destroyer was.
Oh yeah.
Which,
it's not a trap.
The Mon Calamari guy, he's being told too that it's a trap instead of the calamari creature saying that it's a trap. I don't know. I just thought that was funny.
Yeah,
that had to be in the back of their head that they're doing this on purpose. They're using that term with the calamari. And so, so I'll just run through our socials really quick. So you can find us on Twitter at DetBlockAA23pod, on Instagram at detention_block_AA_23. And then our Facebook group and YouTube channels, Detention Block AA23, a Star Wars podcast. Bring your likes, comments, downloads, subscriptions, reviews, specifically 5-star reviews really go a long way for getting our podcast name out there. So anything you can do, we greatly appreciate it. So yeah, we will wrap that up for us today. Anything outside of Star Wars for you guys?
World Baseball Classic was awesome.
Oh,
anyone saying, "Oh, it doesn't mean anything," and all the players are like, "This is freaking awesome."
We got to see a matchup made for history.
Yeah,
with Ohtani going up against Mike Trout for the last at bat of the whole tournament. That was pretty cool.
Biggest at bat and biggest pitches thrown in their careers. That is a freaking travesty. I saw like all the memes were like, Ohtani led Japan to this and Trout led USA to that, and they're like, man, wouldn't it be cool if they played on the same team?
Wait a minute, they do play on the same team.
That's a joke.
I know.
That's how bad. That's how bad the organizations run around them.
Yeah. No, that's so true. But
I
would say Trey Turner was the one that led the United States. He was definitely the MVP of the U.S. in this tournament.
This is gonna sound, like treason, but I was kind of happy Japan won. Like, I think they wanted it more. Like 50-something million people watched the games in Japan, which is literally half the. At one point during the Ohtani at bat, 97% of households watched that in Japan.
Yeah,
that's nuts.
Well, I felt vindicated as a Brewer fan that Japan won because the analytics drive me crazy, and I can guarantee the Japanese are not following analytics to play the game. That's more of an Americanized style to play baseball. Whereas the Japanese, at least from what we've seen, play more to like the fundamentals and how the game was originally intended to play. And
did you know that like their incidence of Tommy John for their pitchers is like a fraction of what ours is in the United States?
I believe it, because we're all about power and velocity.
Yeah.
And they're more about technique and
the art of pitching.
Yeah.
And they teach the proper technique so they don't. It's incredible. I mean, it's like, it's another thing that's crazy. I think it's Japan. It's one of the Asian countries. Like and this is a side note, but kind of similar in thought. They have like a 0% peanut allergy rate.
Really?
Yeah, and it's because this like chew toy that like all babies get. I don't want to say it's Japan. I could be wrong, and I apologize. It could be another Asian country, but it's like they're made in the same factory as like a peanut factory. It's like
so they're all exposed.
Yeah, they're exposed like instantly as babies, and so they don't develop the peanut allergy, which is what I've been trying to tell my wife is like we need to expose our kid to all these crappy things because then
so they don't
build immunity to it.
For sure.
Yeah, agreed.
So anyway, the World Baseball Classic was phenomenal. I didn't watch a lot of the games. I watched the final. I thought it was phenomenal. I thought John Smoltz was milk toast. I don't know if you ever heard that term. I mean, it just was not good. Like his announcing was boring. He said at one point, I think the USA strategy is to score more runs than Japan.
So John Madden?
No, John Madden was interesting.
No, I know, but I'm just saying.
But John Madden is also funny too. Like he would say stuff like that, but that he would actually do fun stuff as a follow-up.
Right.
John Smoltz was like on autopilot. It was embarrassing. And if you juxtapose that with some of the Japanese calls or like some South Korean calls from when they were playing.
Oh yeah, there's a lot more excitement and.
Yeah, I was like, dude, if you didn't want to be here, let someone else do it.
Well, I think it's probably it's really challenging because I think a lot of the good broadcasters for baseball come from like TBS and they're all covering right now the March Madness tournament.
Bob Uecker was doing it. That would have been
so. Bob Uecker can't even do every Brewers game, or he can't even do every inning for every Brewers game. But man, he is.
Hey, if I'm the Brewers,
one of the best announcers of all time.
Since the Brewers really love to find their heavy set sluggers, they should go after that guy who just cranked one. That's like Matsusaka was his name. I apologize. I probably butchered that, but he was a heavier set guy, but the guy hit 56 home runs in the Japanese league. So, and the way that they kind of look at things is Japanese league is like AAA, and then like the South or the Korean league is more like AA as far as like where they are.
I would love to know how many of those players on the Japanese team that have been given deals to play in the United States and turned them down. I'd be curious to know that metric.
Did you hear about there was like a pitcher on one of the Mexican teams, and he struck out the heart of the Order of USA, and the Detroit scout signed him on the spot.
Really? Well, you'll get great. I mean, that exposure that you get from the WBC is, going to change lives for many of those players. That's an opportunity for us to see other styles of baseball. And I agree with you. I think it's good for baseball that that Team Japan won, just because of their style and their commitment to the true game of baseball, which is really cool.
I just want to say, fuck Keith Olbermann. If you know who that is.
I'm drawing a blank.
He's like that old curmudgeon-y baseball.
Don't use my last name in vain.
I see what you did there.
But nothing from Last of Us. No one said anything from Last of Us.
It was fine. I thought he did the opposite in the games where he gives Ellie to the researchers. No.
He does, but then...
He does. He goes and gets her.
He goes and gets her after he realizes that the procedure will kill her.
Okay, it ended exactly the same as the game.
Yeah.
Could they find
in fact, some shots are almost identical.
Yeah. The hallway's identical. I think they even had the same wall mural if you remember from the show, they like focus on that like kid illustrated wall. I believe that same wall mural is in the game as well. So I thought that was pretty cool.
And like also the parking garage sequence is almost identical to the game.
Yeah. Yep.
Where he shoots Marlene.
Yep.
So that comes out on Steam in 6 days.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, you're gonna love that game. It's so much fun.
It's so good.
Even though you know the outcome, it's so much fun. I had a hard time sleeping sometimes because I would just be thinking about the game, because it'll startle you from time to time, but it's not just that. It's just, I don't know. It's a mentally dark game and it gets you thinking. So can't wait for season 2. I guess they're going to turn the second game into 2 seasons, which is probably for the best because there's a lot to cover, especially with, I won't say anything too much about it, Dustin, but especially knowing how the game plays out, there's just so much more to cover, which will probably require multiple seasons. So, all right. And with that, we will wrap it up. So thanks for tuning in to us today, this evening. Looking forward to more Star Wars content to bring everyone next week. And as always, may the Force be with you. Also with baseball, is that what you said?
It's about to start.
Okay. Well, you said it so silently, your mic wasn't picking up. So
Baseball.
there you go. Opening day, just around the corner. The 30th, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see you. We'll see you, baseball.